So since the test that's not tomorrow but the next day is mostly on factoring, let's start with a factoring question. Now I want you to factor this thing as far as you can. That's always the directions. It's never just factor it a little bit. It's factor it all the way. All right. And at the end, I'd like you to figure out what the zeros are. The solutions. Not just the factors. What makes it equal 0, which are called the solutions. Now, do you need any kind of fancy synthetic division for this? No, you don't. You can just jump right into, after you factor the 4 out, it'll factor again. And then, hopefully it's done, or if not, you have to factor it even more. Factor it all the way, and then get the zeros. If it involves imaginary numbers, then those can't be x-intercepts. Remember that. I'm going to pause for a second while you finish this up. Okay, let's see if you got this far. X and x was a good start, but then that's not enough to get x to the 4th. All right, so then you go x squared and x squared. And then, hopefully, I've taught you to do the signs next. I'm looking for a negative last number, which means a plus and a minus here. Then it's got to be a 3 and a 1. So I'm using a 3. I'm putting it there, though, and a 1. And I double-checked that by just, in my head quick, going 3x squared and then a negative 1x squared. And together, that makes 2x squared. Cool, I did it. But that's the critical moment. And I did kind of hint at this, but I guarantee you there's somebody who forgot that this factors to x plus 1 and x minus 1. I'm not going to out you by making you raise your hand, but I know some of you forgot that, and that would cost you. You can't get credit for factoring unless it's factored all the way. And now, there's some small subset of kids that think that gives you one of your answers. It does not. There's only if there was an x there. It's only what x value makes this 0. What x value makes this 0. What x value makes that 0. What x value? There's no x value there. So it's not giving you an answer. But this one gives you 2 answers. This one's easy. X equals negative 1. And this one's x equals 1. But this one, you got to say x squared plus 3 equals 0. X squared equals negative 3. Square root. Who actually has absolute values written on your device? You used the absolute values. Okay. If you didn't, be prepared that that could be marked wrong because you're not showing your work. That's the work. And then I root 3. And I know some people right here put plus minus. That is wrong. That is not positive and negative. The absolute value will split and give you a positive and a negative answer. But if you put it right here, you're saying that the square root of negative 3 has 2 answers. It does not. The square root of negative 3 only has 1 answer, and it's that. The reason there's a plus and minus is because of the split. I root 3 and negative I root 3. Those are your 2 imaginary solutions. And remember me telling you, if you ever get an imaginary solution, there's got to be 2. It's a fact. You can use that the rest of your life. Okay? If there's one imaginary, actually, there's got to be 2. All right, so now there's 2 reals, 2 imaginaries. Would it be safe to say that there are 4 x-intercepts? No, because these can't be x-intercepts. Would it be safe to say that there are 4 zeros? Yes. These will all make it equal 0. If you take one of these and put it back in the equation, and you multiply it all out, it will equal 0. They're all zeros, but only 2 of them are x-intercepts. Okay. Now, one thing we should probably do is practice a, let's see, what do you call those? A long, nope, not long division. It's called synthetic. There we go. Thank you. Synthetic division. So This is like the hardest kind there is. X to the fourth minus x to the third minus x squared minus x minus 2. It's not hard because of all the minuses at all. That's not it. It's because I didn't tell you what number possibly could go in the little box. So you have to use what I taught you yesterday, which was F-con over F-co, to figure out, oh, there's 4 possible things, and you check all of them. 1, -1, -1, -1, -2. Draw the line. Make sure there's no missing terms. Fourth, third, second, first. There was no missing terms, so I didn't need any zeros. So what are the factors of the constant, Steichen? F-con?
-2, 2, 1, and -1.
Yep. I'm going to say just plus or minus, and then the factors of the constant are 2 and 1. Yep. Those are the 4 things that it could be. You're supposed to divide by the factors of the coefficient, but on this one, that's just 1, and dividing by 1 doesn't really do much, right? The lead coefficient is a 1. Okay, so I'm going to just try -2. You can tell this is probably not working. Yeah, it didn't work out. Now, just to clarify, if they had asked you the question, is -2 a 0? You'd have to say no because the remainder was this. So I really should finish this. And I get 20. Now, I didn't ask you that on this question, but we could on the test. And your answer would be no, it didn't work because there's a remainder 20. So that's your proof if it ever is not factorable. All right. Who found it? What actually worked? 2 is correct. So you actually, if you haven't found it yet, go through and use 2. And what you're doing here is you're factoring. That's the whole point. So get your answer written as a factored polynomial. One times 2 makes the 2, and then I get a 1, and then I get a 2, and then I get a 1, and I get a 2, and I get a 1, and I get a 2, and I end up with a 0. Yay, it worked. But does that look like a factored polynomial to you? Hopefully, you know to make it have an x minus 2 to begin with. Yes, question?
Can't -1 also work?
Humanly possible. Let me double check and look at my... How about this? Let me look at the final answer, because if the final answer can be factored and has an x minus 1 in it, then I'll know you were right. All right, so this is x, and this is x squared, and this is x to the third, and then there's little pluses in between each of these. So, is it factored all the way yet? If you didn't notice, you should factor it again. I would use divide and conquer. That kind of factoring definitely shows up. This little weird one at the end, it's like there's nothing that factors out. 1 does. And you need that 1. Bringing down the x minus 2 from above, the x plus 1 is the common factor now. And what's left is the x squared plus 1. And I was asked by a student whether wouldn't -1 have worked also? By looking at the final answer, yeah, it would have. So if you were going through and you were like, why'd you use 2? You could use 2. You could have used -1. They both would have worked. There's your final answer. It's factored all the way. Just on a quick look, how many answers do you think you have? I think there's 4. And the problem had a power of 4. That makes sense. Just on a quick look, do they all look like they're going to be real? That's real. That's real. X squared plus 1 equals 0. X squared equals negative 1. Square root of negative. That's going to be an I. They're not all real. There's 2 imaginaries, 2 reals. Okay, cool. Now, I need to take the rest of the time to talk over the easy stuff. Because honestly, I told you some of the scores from last hour, gave you an example. There's some people in here that are going to get 8 wrong out of 20. The easy ones. So let's talk about the easy things. Because if we get to get that all fixed today, then tomorrow we can focus on the last of the hardest kind of problems, which that pretty much was. Like that was about as hard as it gets for polynomial long. And that was about as hard as it gets for this was hard as it gets for synthetic. This is about as hard as it gets for this kind. So we just have a couple more hard problems we can practice tomorrow. So what's the easy stuff? First off, if I tell you boing, boing, derp, this equation uses these numbers. That's supposed to be a 10. Can you write the equation for me? We're getting into the stuff I'm about to quiz you on, so pay especially good attention. And if you don't know how to do it, raise your hand and say, I'm not sure what to do here, or how do I start, or I'm stuck on this part. Mr. French, did you have an x plus 4 in your answer?
Yeah.
Excellent. Tell me a little more about the x plus 4.
It's balancing, so you need a square it.
Very good. That is called a double root. Mr. Breen, tell me something else about the final equation.
It has a negative in the front.
Yes. Since it's going down on the right, I know some kids forgot that. It happens every time because people forget to look. Ooh, is it going down on the right? It's the only way you'd know. Carlos, tell me the rest of the equation.
X minus 6 squared and x minus 10.
You got it. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. Now, here's the crazy part. There is literally I think I could even stretch it to 10 things I could ask you about this equation. All right? So I want you to tell me, we'll just put down number 1. What's the lead term? Oh, I don't see a lead term. Well, you got to make it. You got to take numbers that are there and letters that are there, variables, figure out what the lead term would be. The answer is like 6x to the 5th, but that's not actually the answer. So I was looking for lead term there. Now, I'm not going to say who I'm concerned about, but I'm noticing that there's somebody who's just like really puzzled looking at the board, and I get that. But if you're taking notes, then you're going to be fine. If all you do is look at the board all confused, you're just going to leave confused. But if you have notes on what the right answers were, then you'll be fine. You'll learn this. You got 2 more days. You got today and tomorrow. But don't just sit there looking at the board. All right. So this is the part where I want you to talk to the kid next to you. Heck, you're going to be working with them in a minute on this quiz. So what do you think the lead term is? Turn and talk to the kid next to you. All right. The lead term was negative, you include that, x to the second and another x to the second, that makes x to the fourth, and another x, and that makes x to the fifth. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Cool. Now that one, in turn, tells me the next 3 questions. What's the lead co? Short for coefficient. What's the degree? What's happening on the right end? Is it going up or down? And on the left end? What are the roots? Hint, they're not the same as x-intercepts. X-intercepts have to have comma 0 because they have a y equal to 0. Roots are just the numbers. What are the x-intercepts without the point thing? You know, just like what are the x-intercepts? The same thing as the roots are the same thing as the zeros. These numbers would make the equation 0. And then the weirdest one is what's the MPY? Does anybody remember the name for that? It's a long word. Multiplicity. I'm just shortening it up, but what's the multiplicity? Now, if I totally get, we've only talked about this like once, and it happened a few days ago. So multiplicity is the thing where it's like bouncing or just passing through. And all you have to say is it a single, a double, or a triple? Okay, so the right answers for this are single, double, or triple. Each root has a multiplicity. You don't just say, like, this whole thing is a multiplicity of single. No. Each little part, each little parenthesis has its own multiplicity. I'll give you the answers for it in a second, but why don't you talk with your partner about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll pause while you do that. Okay, let's see if you understood those. So the lead coefficient, the coefficient's the number in front of the variable, and that would be a -1. If you put x there, no, you can't. X is not part of the coefficient. It's the number in front of the x. The degree is 5. I'm sure everybody got that right. The right end is going down. Because why? Because there's a negative in the front, and that tells you the right end. The left end is either the same or different than that. Since this is odd, it's different than that. So that would be up. Okay, the roots are the -4, the 6, and the 10. These guys, those are the roots. They're also the zeros. Okay, I'm going to say x equals, just because you don't write these as points, -4, 6, 10. And now I'm going to write the letter above each one. You don't have to write it this way, but you had to somehow say, what's the multiplicity of that one? Well, see, it's bouncing there. So that would be a double. That one's a double. The 6, it was bouncing there also. Also a double. The 10, that was just passing through. That would be a single. Does that would make sense to you? Feel like you get that? Okay. Now, what if I asked you for the y-intercept? Some subset of you is going to be like, oh yeah, I remember how to do that. You might be like, well, you didn't label it on the graph. I don't have to. You can figure out the y-intercept by doing something. It will be a ludicrously large or small number. I know. The answer is going to be humongous. On the test, we would not give you one that's this big because there's no calculators on this next test. But just tell me at least you know what you would have done to get the y-intercept. All right, by now you either know this or you don't. The y-intercept is where, this is if you're taking notes, where x equals 0. So you stick in a 0 here, and here, and here, and then you figure out what that all comes up to. So that's going to be, for the first part, it's going to be a 4 squared, which is a 16. Don't forget the negative. That makes it negative 16. So it's going to be negative 16 times the next parenthesis, which would be negative 6 squared, which is 36. And then last but not least, times negative 10. So those two negatives are going to cancel. And then that would be 16 times, I'm going to do the 16 times the 10 because it's easy, and that's 160. So in the end, it's 160 times 36. At a minimum, it's a big positive number. We wouldn't make one that hard because you don't have a calculator. But that's what you do. Okay, now I've practiced pretty much everything, but not everything that's on the quiz. So here's the last major help I want to give you. Don't write this down. Just watch me for a second. If that's negative 1 comma 4, and that low spot there is at 1 comma 2, would you agree that between the two blue dots, it's decreasing? We haven't done this in a while. Write the decreasing interval for that. How do you do that? Don't just write the 2 points. That won't work. Decreasing interval there. If you don't know, check with your partner, see if they remember this. Maybe you'll both remember. Maybe neither one of you remembers.
Either way, it's going to turn out negative.
All right. You use the x values. So in this case, that would be from negative 1 to 1. And I know my scale of my graph is off a little bit, but would you agree that's the x value here and that's the x value there? All right, cool. Are there other places where it was decreasing? Yeah, there's another place. I'd have to tell you this point, but I'd like to do this one because it's a really common one. People screw up the infinity. So now I already warned you. Let's see if you can not screw up the infinity. This is going to be at 2 comma 3 right here. What's the other decreasing interval? Just got to put in 2 little numbers in the right spots. Tell the person next to you your theory. Is it negative infinity or is it infinity? All right. Y'all know it starts with 2, right? Because it's the x value. It goes from 2 to Well, I'm going to put in two key things. Way over here lives regular infinity. Way down here lives negative infinity. So the question is it infinity or negative infinity? Well, which one's the x value? That's the x value. Infinity. If you were thinking negative infinity, I get it. You're seeing it went way down. But the question is not how low did it go? The question is x values, that it was decreasing between. So that was, again, 2 to infinity. All right, now you are ready. Now the only thing we're doing for the rest of the hour is taking this quiz, and then the last thing is I want to tell you about the homework. So after the quiz, you can start the homework. You work with the kid next to you. You got the same assignment. You're doing the odd problems on the review sheet. There's 17 of them. There'd be way too many to do anyways. We do have 2 days to do it. Okay, so you're just doing the odd ones today. We'll do the even ones tomorrow. But one more thing, you may want to take a second to go there right now and cross off number 5. Because it is so brutally hard, I would hate to have you forget that you can skip number 5. So cross off number 5 and do the rest of the odd problems. I really don't care if you do them tonight, but I'd feel bad for you if you don't, because then you got to do them all tomorrow night, and that's a lot. So it'd be really smart for you to do half of it tonight. You're not going to turn it in until you've done the whole thing. Okay? And that's due Friday. So cross off number 5 and work on the other odd problems. And you can keep your iPads out and be working on that while I hand out the quizzes. And then once the quizzes are all out, then I'll have you put those away and focus on the little quiz we take in class. That's all I got for the video for today.